My name is Ken Hall. I'm with Gensler. I'm kicking this off this morning. Welcome to DOS. I'm not even sure how many years we've been doing this at this point. 7, 8, 9, 10? Wow. Wow. And we're going to do something different today. We're going to try and have less guru on the stage and more conversation. What we found is, as we've been talking about these topics, we've been having great conversations. And we want to incorporate you and bring you into those conversations. And if there was anything that we need to do a better job at these days, it's having conversations with each other, not past each other. So it's going to be a little wild. It's going to be a bit chaotic, all right, because we're going to have people coming down here and people going up there. Bio breaks are sort of whenever you want to take a bio break, but a good time to do that is when people are coming down here and going back up. So please forgive us for any messiness that exists there. Fortunately this year, I'm getting a tremendous amount of help from this man right here. Michael Tardif has stepped up and he's really done the whole program. Anything that goes wrong here, this is your man. If I would have realized the degree to which he'd been buffing up, I think I wouldn't have brought him up here on stage with me.
But this is our theme this year. And part of the reason is that when we look at the issue of sustainability, it seems just completely overwhelming. And it seems like no matter what we do, there's nothing that any single one of us can do to change the outcome. So I want to frame the conversation with an example. So if I turn off the lights when I leave the room, if I turn up the thermostat in the summer, if I turn it down in the winter, if I walk instead of drive, one way of looking at that is it doesn't make a damn bit of difference. The world's still going to hell. The sea level's going to rise, global temperatures are going to go up, and my actions make no difference at all. The other way to look at it is every time I do any of those things, the energy that otherwise would have been consumed will never be produced. The impact is permanent. And so we're looking at the same data, right? The same problem from two different views. And the view you choose to take to look at the problem affect your behavior and can affect the behavior of others, which then affects the outcome globally. The other thing that I want to add to that, to this theme, is that all of us here are experts, right, of one kind or another. And what's wonderful about experts is that we're really good at telling other people what to do. And so we want to change the conversation here, and it's particularly why we're focusing on having conversations. If you hear yourself saying, if only someone else would do something, or if only this would happen, then we could, address this problem. I'm going to say, Your Honor, I object, and the judge is going to say, sustained. Comments to be disregarded. So focus your attention on I. What can I do to materially affect this problem? And if you use that simple example I gave you, it doesn't matter if we're talking about your personal life at home, your professional career, the choices you make as an individual in whatever role you play in your organization can have an impact. So whether it's at home, at work, in your community, things can make a difference. Got it? And Brad's going to give us an example of what we're talking about.
I only have one slide. I don't need to deal with. So let's each read this together. So, Chris, what is the first word? So, cofes.com/green is where this list resides. Some time ago, we said, when we started the DOS Symposium, we said, let's not just talk about it, let's do something about it. So we outlined a number of steps that COFES could do that would make a difference, and also that science research can do to make a difference. And there are lots of little things, but there are two things that I want to highlight on here, and they are number 10 and number 16. And these two things have made a huge impact beyond COFES. So number 10 says, we held discussions on sustainability with each of our major suppliers, letting them know what we are doing and asking them what they can do to help us be more sustainable. That conversation with the hotel has led to a number of improvements that the hotel has made, which has a impact way, way beyond the impact of COFES. And the other one is number 16, which is make a commitment to make smart decisions. We don't go out and buy recycled paper when we have perfectly good paper in hand that we can still use. In other words, don't go and buy sustainable if you have something you can use to replace things. Don't throw away. And the most important part of that, use what we have first, check our waste streams, but also buy things that are going to last generationally instead of buying things for features. Spend more, hold on to it longer, pass it on. And every time we go back and look at this list, we try to add on to it and continue to evolve it. But it's a pretty powerful list of individual actions. Your list is going to be different. And actually, it wouldn't be a bad idea for the DOS Symposium to collect those additions to here on what actions other people have decided that they can take and share them. And that's all I've got. Yes, Nathaniel. Runner?
Oh, sorry.
I'll come up to the front. There's a gearing on that statement as well, which is that, I've come to COFES for 17 years now. I'm 32 years old. Hi, Hans-Peter. Hans-Peter, Lee Hall, this is an unashamed pitch for a tech suite, the Earth Energy Monitoring System tech suite. And you can go learn about that more later. But the thing that scales the actions that we can do to global proportions is that the COFES community builds tools, that builds products that shape the world. And so more than, you're talking about a hotel, and you're talking about an action, you're talking about a piece of paper, right? But the scaling, when we make those actions as tool creators, the scaling that has into the supply chains and into the products and into, you'll see visuals of massive volumes of data, of thousands of container ships traversing the oceans and airplanes flying 1 million at a time, right? Like, those decisions are made based on engineering tools, and this Congress on the Future of Engineering Software is where those tools are conceived. So that gearing action is the significance of this.
Yeah, and I'll just say one more thing. Yeah. I'll just say one more thing.
The conversation has begun.
That gets back to the core of why we did DOS Symposium in the first place. Here at COFES, we have the people who create the tools for design engineering. And the designers and engineers have the biggest impact on the go-forward sustainability for what happens for what gets put in place and what gets replacement. And we have leverage by shaping what the software developers do in terms of providing the tools. So that's why it's design and sustainability, to get the tool makers thinking about their responsibility to their customers to leverage that big impact. And thank you for reminding us, Nathaniel.
And this page is at cofes.com/green. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I think one of the best things that my wife and I did was that we designed a small passive solar home. 1,950 square feet. We built it in 1991, and the benefit of that has been immense. Less furniture, less electricity, less waste, less effort cleaning it, buy better things. That decision we made so many years ago has just reinforced itself over and over again. My goal today is to get some thoughts back up in our brains. We meet, we have great ideas, we go away, we forget them, and then it takes a while to get all of our brains harmonized again. So I've got a couple of little themes I want to start off the morning with to sort of get us thinking. And a lot of it is review from previous sessions. A number of us have been thinking about systems thinking. And one of the books that was recommended by Jack this year, and I can't see it on the bottom down there, and I don't remember the... Thank you. And the basic idea here is DRSP. And he postulates this is almost like DNA, that this in itself is a complex adaptive system that you can think with. And that means, what are the distinctions between things? Can we draw meaningful distinctions? What are the relationships between these ideas? In what ways do these ideas form a system? What are the parts? What are the subparts? And what are the perspectives? Because a lot of what we're doing today is we're offering different perspectives. And one of the challenges that we face is this movement back and forth between perspectives. So think about your own perspectives as you're thinking about these topics of economics, technology, water, and waste. Likewise, Donnell Meadows came out with a great book on systems thinking. I've used this slide a lot in the past. It's a wonderful set of 12 things, aspects of systems that you can use to prod systems to bring about change. And what's interesting is the degree of leverage that you have increases as you go from 12 up to number 1. And it's interesting that in my world, AEC, we talk about rebuilding the building stock, but that's part of the stock and flow structures. That's a real slow way to change a system. And yet, a transcending paradigm will change a whole system overnight. The amazing thing about the human brain is it's so resistant to change, and yet it can change just like that. Peter Marx has reminded us time and time again of our own cognitive biases that kick in. We're not aware of the assumptions that are up and running in our brains when we're thinking. We don't oftentimes reflect upon our thinking processes. And what is shown here is a wonderful model of a complex adaptive system, and I've got a few more slides that'll detail this. And it deals with this notion of the capacity of a system, its potential, its degree of connectedness, and its degree of resilience. And it's postulated and fairly well modeled that all complex adaptive systems move through these cycles. And the United States of America is a great example. When the colonists came here, there was an amazing landscape full of resources and native peoples. Tremendous capacity. And as we unified this country and pulled it together with telegraphs and iron horses, we increased its connectedness. And we had tremendous resilience in the early days, up through World War II. But you might argue that we're almost over-connected now, and we've almost become incredibly fragile. So these are great tools to think with. And I think it's really interesting that within this system is the notion of both a poverty trap that humans can get stuck in. Think about your Department of Motor Vehicles. Talk about a rigidity trap. It's a natural evolution of a system. And here's what's really interesting. And Jack, we've had interesting conversations about what is sustainability. And I would make the argument that sustainability is not a problem we can solve, but rather it's a paradox that we and all subsequent generations are going to be living with as long as human civilization is on Earth. And that one of the ways that you can actually become more sustainable is as you're actually coming up this curve of increasing connectedness and increasing potential, you just voluntarily sort of loop back down in certain aspects of your systems. Maybe you said maintenance costs. All right. So that's systems thinking, and I kind of wanted to get those notions in your head because we want you to think about how well do we think about this as a system? How can we as humans do a better job systems thinking to solve these complex challenges that we face? Now, last year, on Sunday, we have a fireside chat. And last year was Peter Marks talking about economics. This year too. And I will be there all the way up until I have to leave for my flight, and I had to leave about 15 minutes before he finished, which just tore me up. But the big ideas were, he brought us back into a historical perspective on economics, going back to hunter-gatherer societies and tracing that history through hydraulic civilization and agriculture and the Middle Ages, and finally the notion of the concept of a customer doesn't even occur until 1500. And then, and it's really interesting, between 1500 and 1800, the world of trade, and especially branded products. I mean, think about the notion that right now, water is branded, right? We're branding the whole world, turning it into a product. Now, Peter went on to say, the invention of the corporation and capitalism was brilliant. And what it enabled us to do, at least what it enabled industrialists to do. But he got to the point that about 1970 in this country, there was a huge debate. And you had Peter Drucker, the god of business, for so many years saying, the sole purpose is to create a satisfied customer. And then we had this switch. Corporations become people, and Milton Friedman says, the sole purpose is to create profits for shareholders. And with that change in thinking, over the last 30 to 40 years, Peter then traced out a whole history of various financial fiascos. Madoff, savings and loan, Keating, the whole 9 yards. So capitalism doesn't seem to be working for us anymore. We have unleashed greed and envy in search of profits, financialized our economy, creating the gig economy. Peter said capitalism cannot create enough jobs in the future. Certainly automation is going to be a part of this, but it just isn't going to create enough jobs for people. And we've got to start thinking now about where that goes. We need we don't have he says we're going to have plenty of jobs to be done, but we don't have a mechanism to pay for them. And Peter had a model, and this is what I really wanted to capture, but I couldn't capture it from the audio recording. I went back to listen to it. I couldn't find my notes. And so here we have some ideas, some topics, which are related together in a system and which have a set of distinctions between them. So my goal was simply to get that, to create these two ends. We finished off with economics on Sunday of last year. We're starting up wanting you to think about economics in the context of everything we're talking about. And we moved economics to the very end because Peter is hopefully going to yet join us later this afternoon. And then that conversation will continue through on Sunday. Brad.
What is the purpose of the company today?
What is the purpose of the company today? That is the big question. Thank you. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, is there an answer to that question?
I'm not going to pose one.
Let's pose the question, and then we'll
Well, that's what I was trying to pose.
leave it open for the day. How's that? What'd you do with the clicker? I knew we were going to misplace that thing. Oh, you got it. Okay. We can have that conversation now, if you want.
I had to miss Peter's session, and this transition from Drucker to Friedman is shocking in my mind, and so telling on what we basically the impact of that is global, profound, And the question is it irreversible? I would look to the work of Bo Burlingham, for instance, as a somewhat of a counter to this. There's the difference between a company and a corporation, and if we want to distinguish the difference between the purpose of a company, which could be personal, and the purpose of a corporation, which has shareholders and has a corporate responsibility. And then, Cass, if you want to talk about the concept of a public benefit corporation and what the little tiny word that makes the difference, I think that would be a little bit of a good perspective.
Yeah, well, and something that's resonating with me is that between Peter and Milton, you know, they're talking about the profits of shareholders versus what customers want, but they're not talking about what the world at large wants. And I think that's where you have these public benefit or B Corp come into play, where the focus is not just on, like I said last year, it's not just on the capital gains for the shareholders, it's about the whole ecosystem of humanity and how it can benefit all of humanity, not just benefit a few select people, right, or the founder or CEO of a company, but just the whole ecosystem of humanity. So I think that's a clear distinction between the two of them, or three of them, I should say.
Cassandra, would you just introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry, I'm Cassandra Wesselman. Last year I was here as Cassandra Elwell. I've been married since then, and I am a financial person. So specifically, I raise money for B Corp or social impact companies. And I introduce them to investors and people with a lot of money to help make their dreams come true for the world at large. So,
The one thing I want to point out, a B Corp sounds all touchy-feely, et cetera. I've created a B Corp for C4UC Inc. In order to become a...
That's the Center for Understanding Change.
That came out of the Center for Understanding Change, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. The difference between a C Corp and a B Corp is a B Corp is a C corporation that is allowed to consider things other than direct shareholder benefit in making a decision. That's the only difference in the law. If you are a C Corp, you must, by law, keep your shareholders' vested interests first. If you are a B Corp, you can consider other things. It's a very, very simple concept that should be that has incredibly powerful results.
I'm going to just dispute one notion, which is that there's nothing in the law, to the best of my knowledge, that says corporations are obligated, let me finish, to put the interest of shareholders ahead of everything else.
There is. All right, go ahead. Let me just respond. It's not in the law, it's in the case law in terms of the precedents that are set by suits of shareholders against. So it's not the actual law itself, but it's how the law has been interpreted by the courts.
By the way, it is in the Uniform Commercial Code, which is the common law of business. One of the things, I'm Scott Brinks. One of the things that we need to look at also as we talk about Friedman is a few minutes ago we talked about buying quality and making long-term things and making things last generationally. What we've done is we've taken Friedman to the extreme, and what we're doing today is building things for the quarterly report. Okay, so we stopped building long-term. We're building things with obsolescence, waste, and throw it away, modular things, and that's all wrapped up by what's the profit this quarter. So we've accelerated Freeman.
All right, the accounting infrastructure that Scott mentioned. I'll get out of here. But the
Is there a way to
accounting
turn off mics?
infrastructure, if we can change the generally accepted accounting practices for corporations, we can change sustainability and sustainable impact and long-term thinking. That is going to be the hardest change to happen, but that actually can happen with a very small group of people acting in an area that you would think would have nothing to do with anything, and that is the Association of Accountants.
I'm already behind schedule. You guys, I knew there wasn't going to be any problem getting you going. 30 seconds?
2 sentences.
2 sentences.
Optimized for what? And the corporation, through the end of the information age into the complexity age, optimized for cash.
Interesting.
This is from Peter Marks last year. I'm so glad you brought this forward.
Yeah. And I forgot I actually had one more slide, but I'm going to ask Chris to come down. And this is a good introduction to Chris, actually. These are, again, comments from Peter Marks, as filtered by me. So if he hasn't seen these slides or approved of them, so take that into context. It was interesting. He wrote in an email to me that's the notion of sustainability, the whole idea of this. It's getting bad press. We don't even use the word anymore in my firm. We've got to be careful about us versus them. This is what I wanted to get to. Let's think of 2 economic systems for a little bit, and this goes to my introduction to Chris, who's coming up here. One characterized by boom and bust, the other by generational stability, which is an interesting notion. Boom or bust economies predicated on assumptions of infinite growth, creative destruction. What are sustainable economies? Homeostasis or equilibrium? This is language that Peter was using, which plays right into what Chris is going to be talking about. What is the right mix of a boom and bust economy and an equilibrium economy? Can we leverage the boom times in order to become more resilient in the down times? What are these root causes? And then finally, and this is really my language, down at the bottom in parentheses, can we, as a conscious, complex, adaptive system, learn to get comfortable with writing the chaotic boundary, transitioning from the boom and bust economy that we've been in to something that's more resilient, something that enables some kind of stability over generations or some kind of resilience? And with that, we asked Chris to come in and speak with us, who's from the Santa Fe Institute.